Well, welcome to Holy Trinity and St Saviour's Sermons. Here we seek to live life to the full, and I hope this sermon inspires you to do exactly that.
Today's reading is taken from John chapter 1, verses 1 to 18. The Word becomes flesh. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not understood it. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify concerning that light, so that through him all might believe. He himself was not the light. He came only as a witness to the light. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, and to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. Children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision or a husband's will, but born of God. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. John testified concerning him. He cried out, saying, "This is the one I spoke about when I said, 'He who comes after me has surpassed me, but because he was before me, one of his fullness, we have all received grace in place of grace already given. For the law was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God, but the one and only Son, who is himself God and is in closest relationship with the Father, has made him known.'" This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Every year, for a number of years now, Julie and I have done a big charity walk, and we're a bit worried that we may not be able to do it this year, but we will see in September, and it's quite long. And a few years ago, because we were a bit slow, by the time we got back to Shear, it was getting dark, and I can still remember. It was a brilliant moment walking across the A25 and looking both ways, and a great big moon just above there. And as we stepped across the A25, and on the last leg, we stepped into this great big wood, incredibly dark, down this, down in that part of the world, how you got those great sort of sandy culverts that you walk through. We were walking through one of those, and it was dark, and we couldn't see where we were going, and we didn't know what we were doing, like most of the time. And as we emerged from this culvert, there was the village hall, and we were home. The light shone in the darkness, and we knew we were home. It was a wonderful moment. I wonder if you think now, if you think about light and all that it means, what sort of thoughts come into your mind? What sort of things can you think of that light means to you. In that case, it meant we'd achieved our goal. It meant that we'd come to our journey's end. What does light mean? This is an open question. I'm sure, sorry you guys at home can't take part, but what do we think of when we think of light? Ability to see, thank you. Safety. Colours. Actually, I'm good at that one. Very good. Any more? For any more? Rainbow. Was there one on the way in today? I missed it. I was desperate. I was walking along and I saw it was sun over there. And I missed it. I was too busy getting ready here. Rainbow. So you've covered some of, I've written down 7 things here. Safety, illumination, truth, identification, direction, home, warning, light. Without light, we're lost, aren't we? From our earliest prehistory, humans have huddled around light to be safe, to be warm, to be guided. Darkness has always meant danger. Darkness has always been an enemy for us. And when something is plunged into darkness, we feel wrong. Things aren't as they should be. And Simon, if you could pop that picture up. Look at this. That's a satellite image taken in November, I think it says. And look at that picture. Nighttime in Eastern Europe. And you might notice a great area of darkness. And we all know why that is, don't we? And we know that means something is wrong. Things are wrong. Thank you, Simon. In the passage that we read just now, Jesus is described as light 6 times. Verses 4, 5, 7, 8, and 9, if you were paying attention. And in 2 of those references to light, he talks about light as being in contrast to darkness. The light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has not overcome it. John's Gospel is very much about light. If you read through it, you'll find there are 23 references to light in John's Gospel, which is more than all the other Gospels put together. Jesus is the light that dismisses, deposes, and dispels darkness. Now, before I talk about light, I want to say something about darkness. Because I want us to get rid of 2 myths, 2 mistakes that we make when we think about the dark. The first mistake is to ignore the fact that darkness is real. There is a real darkness in our world. We use words like mistake, crime, poor decision. But when we use words like those too easily, we undermine a reality. We undermine the fact that evil is a real thing. There is evil in our world. We don't have to go far. We've obviously seen on our news feeds places like Busha and Kherson, and seen the effects of evil in those places. We hear stories of trafficking and human slavery, and we know that evil is a real thing. Those of us who've had anything at all to do with the caring professions know that evil is a real thing. We've seen the effects on young people, elderly people, people who can't manage life for themselves and have been taken advantage of. And we see that evil is a real thing. And if I dare to say it, for all of us, we look inside our own hearts and those bits of it that we're glad that no one else can see. And we know that evil and darkness are a real thing. Darkness, not just in the bad things that we want to do, but darkness in terms of despair. Darkness in terms of feeling worthless. Darkness is a real thing. To ignore darkness and to try and sort of rise above it and act as if it's not there, to hide from it by switching the news off, by shutting the curtains, by living in a nice neighborhood, or walking a different way to work. That's exactly the opposite of following Jesus, who walked straight in to the darkness to overcome it. Darkness is real. But the second thing I want to say to you, and the mistake we sometimes make, is I want to say to you that darkness is not the same as light. Darkness is not equal to light. We're not in Star Wars. It's not the dark side and the light side fighting each other, and as if you've got these two forces of equal ability and worth clashing against each other. We're not engaged in this struggle between two ancient forces. Darkness does not have the same power as light. Darkness, in fact, is only absence. Darkness is the absence of light. You can't create darkness. You can only create light. If you work to bring light, then you are de facto on the winning side. It's said very clearly, didn't it, in our reading just now, that the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Because darkness can't overcome light. You can't destroy light. Light can only destroy darkness. It only takes a small amount of light, and it's not dark anymore. Light is not the same as darkness. Light overcomes darkness. So the question is here, how did Jesus overcome darkness? How did the light of Jesus take away darkness? And in fact, we're told as well about John the Baptist here, aren't we? About he came as a witness to the light. He brought the early sort of stirrings of that light. How did he work? Big campaign? Nope. Glorious events? Well, yeah, but no. Massive victories? No. Jesus defeated darkness. Light overcame darkness in two ways that we see here. Number one is what we call incarnation, the coming of Jesus into this world. Jesus overcame darkness not by coming from above with massive fleets of angels, but by being born among us, as one of us, like us, beside us. Jesus' way of bringing light was to get beside us. Look at that in verse 9. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. And verse 14, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. The light of Jesus defeated darkness not by standing away and firing artillery into us, but by living among us and being with us. And there is a fantastically subtle and marvelous point that John makes in verse 17 here. Verse 17, for the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. Notice the difference. The law was given by Moses, light and truth came. It came among us. The way that Jesus' light was given to us and came to us was to live among us so that we could see and experience his light. The second way that Jesus' light dispelled darkness was by sacrifice. Jesus overcame darkness by presenting himself to be the ultimate sacrifice. It looked crazy. His enemies assumed that now he had been defeated by the cross. And yet, as we know from the rest of the New Testament, and I don't intend to go through that now, but the rest of the New Testament shows us that where everyone thought that Jesus was defeated by the cross, this was his greatest victory. His sacrifice was light defeating darkness. Amazing. Jesus defeats darkness by being born among us and by sacrificing himself. Now, nothing's changed in the way this works. As we begin a year in a world still full of darkness, as you and I know, God calls us again to reflect the light of Jesus by doing the same things as he did. We want to see darkness overcome by light. And if we want to do this, we don't do this by pious hopes, occasional prayers, or a few pennies. We do it by doing what Jesus did. And since it is January 23, as in 1, 2, 3, I want to present you with 3 things to take away with you and say, are there things here that you can be taking into your life so that you can reflect Jesus in bringing light to this world? And these are basically the same things that he did. Number 1, incarnation. Coming alongside, being with. The way in which we bring light to the world is by getting out of our cozy lives to get alongside people. We acknowledge people, even just speaking to people who we know are in darkness for whatever reason, who are struggling, people who are not necessarily the nice people that we might want to spend all our time with, people who we know have not had all the good things that we might have had. Getting alongside people. Jesus got alongside all kinds of people in his life who maybe weren't exactly the right kind of people, were they? I made a vow, which as always, I haven't always kept, but I'm really trying, that I would never walk past a person selling the big issue anymore. And I'm getting there. I'm getting there with it. And when I bought it, to actually have a conversation with that person, to show them that they're a person who is worth talking to. I've still not got it right, but I'm getting there. And that was one thing that I thought of when I thought Jesus in his incarnation, in getting alongside people, just to show someone. Now, ask Bob, because I know Bob will eagerly talk to you about anyone who's homeless. And Bob will tell you that one of the things that homeless people struggle with is just to be noticed. For people to know that they're a person, to be talked to. And Bob will give you advice if you ask him about what you should give to a homeless person, how wise it is to give money or not to give money. But one thing that you can always give someone is time, and to show that they are a person who matters. Just like Jesus came alongside us in his incarnation, we too can come alongside people to acknowledge them. Don't switch off the news because it's a bit depressing. For the people who are in the news, it's not a bit depressing, it's catastrophic. Let's not just try and push ourselves into our little enclaves and wish for the best. Let us come alongside people that we know and alongside situations that we can be involved in. So number one, incarnation, get alongside. Number two, sacrifice. While I was preparing this, I asked myself a question. I said, when has anything ever actually cost me anything? When has anything I've ever done in my life ever actually cost me anything? And struggled with that one. And I think there are some things where I've actually, it has cost me something. So it's not just I didn't. But I know that it's hard. Well, that's why it's called sacrifice, you see. It's meant to be hard. But ask yourself this question as we start this new year. Where is there a place where I can give up something comfortable? Not just to make myself feel uncomfortable, where I could give up something so that I can then actually change someone else's life. This might mean giving up some time sat in front of the TV to make a phone call, as simply as that. It might mean getting out of your house and going to visit somebody. It might mean not spending money on that which I'd like, to spend money on that which will change someone's life. Where could we sacrifice? Read Isaiah 58, said he, struggling from memory. And you'll see when it talks there about the fast that God likes. And it talks about fasting. And fasting, Isaiah says there, is not just to be pious. Fasting is so that the poor will live. He's saying you give up food, not just so that you can feel, oh, look at me, how religious I am, but it means that someone else can eat. Where can we think about where something can go so that someone else can receive? Jesus cast out darkness by light, and the light was his sacrifice. We're not asked to go anywhere near that far. Where can we say a cost will change somebody else's life, some other part of the world, light breaking in to darkness? And number three, could I ask you to think about how do you stand up, not just for light, but for the light? Notice it talks about the light that gets rid of darkness was coming into the world. The light is Jesus. Let me ask you this question. Is it known about you that you are a follower of Jesus? Or are you just a nice bloke? Is it known about you that the reason that you do this is because you follow the light? Maybe one of the other resolutions we could make as we go into this new year is to not just stand up for good, but to stand up for the light, for Jesus. The time when we let his light shine in our lives. Not just by going around and being all desperately pious, but because people know that we follow him, we do that. I'll finish off with one brilliant story, which I still remember. A guy named Rob Bell writes some brilliant books, slightly controversial, brilliant. But one story he tells in one of his books is about, I'm going to say it's in the Philippines. I think it is. I've probably got that wrong, but anyway, it's a good story. So, in the church, a church in a not a rich part of the Philippines, the pastor stands up one day and says, "The community needs blood. I want you guys to go down and give blood." And the next day, there's a queue, and people come in, and people have the needle stuck in their arm, and they give blood. And they say, why did you come here today? I came here today because of Jesus. And the next person comes in and they say, what are you doing? Say, I've come here because I want to follow Jesus. And do you know what? People actually believe then that Jesus is worth following. One person's a nutter. But when we all do it, something's going on. And I'm not just doing this because I'm a nice guy, or because life's easy for me. I'm doing it because of Jesus. Let's think about how we can make it clear that we follow the light that comes into the world, that changes darkness. So incarnation, get alongside people, sacrifice. Where is God calling me to give up so that others can benefit? And being a follower of the light, not just good stuff. Light overcomes darkness. Any light you bring dispels darkness. We're told that the light can never be put out. Whenever you bring light, you are on the winning side. As the song says, the little song we sing, we love seeing children sing this, don't we? But it is so true. If God is for us, who can be against us? Let my light shine. Let my light shine. Let my light shine.